Welcome to the Low Tox Life podcast.
If you get on social media and post and you are active and you engage, your mental health is not at risk. If you get on social media and passively consume, those are the folks that tend to have deleterious effects from being on social.
I'm Alex Stewart, your host, and I am so thrilled to have you join me here today. Today, I've invited a wonderful Dr. Katelyn Kalstein, who is a naturopathic physician. She's also an acupuncturist, a psychotherapist, and a ketamine-assisted therapist in the United States. And I think where this conversation goes that I love is really looking at the biopsychosocial layers of mental health. Which layer do we unpack first? What do we need to bring in as tools? So let's tuck into this show. It's really powerful, and if something in here speaks to you, I would appreciate you sharing it with someone you know might need it. This show is possible every week thanks to our podcast partners and you, our listeners. And I want to introduce the Aussies who are listening to the Marker Sun Care product. It's the Bambino Kids Sunscreen SPF 50, a huge 25% zinc oxide, which makes it extremely protective against both UVA and UVB rays. And it's reef safe, no nanoparticles, none of those dodgy, harsh preservatives that we see in the media time and again with mainstream sunscreens coming under fire. And you have 20% off for the month of August with the code LOWTOXLIFE. So I would definitely urge you to give this one a try, and Marker Sun Care literally has you covered. Yes, I went there. Hello, Katelyn. How you doing?
Hey, I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm awesome, and I connected with you a little earlier this year, actually, for the first time. I think it was a mutual friend, Dr. Tina, who had shared something of yours, and I was like, oh, that's interesting. And then, you do the usual, like, oh, who is this person? And what I loved, like, straight up was just your integrity. Like, it just shines through in everything you do. It's patient forward, it's science forward, but it's also like we have to put some spirit and some woo and some pioneering that, like, maybe the science hasn't always caught up to where we are, because actually that blend makes for the best modern doctor. And so that's what shone through for me. I want to ask you a question straight up. You're a naturopathic doctor. Where did the mental health piece become a focus for you? Because when you study naturopathy, it's really such a holistic, whole body form of practice. Mental health, was it a personal thing? Where did that come up?
Yes. I would say for sure the biggest motivation has been my own personal challenges, which I probably would not have said I had mental health issues until maybe I was 35 years old.
Wow.
Because it wasn't part of the paradigm I was in to talk about that. And now, of course, it's everywhere, maybe to a harmful degree. Like, everyone talks about kind of normal life stuff as being mental health issues or mental health trauma. And we can talk more about the nuance in that. And I think that it was largely personal. However, like you mentioned, naturopathic medicine is holistic. So one of the reasons why I went into that system of medicine and not allopathic medicine was because they did not separate the mind from the body. And I had some knowing in me early on that the mind very much was a player in sickness. And that if we were trying to make someone physically well, we would probably not be able to get all the way there unless we also treated the mental. So some of my mentors, the people I just gravitated towards in medical school, were more geared towards mental health. They were counselors, they were doing biofeedback. And that's just the circles that everybody kind of chooses their niche, their specialty.
Yeah.
And that was the niche that I was attracted to very early on. I think that the most interesting thing in the world is human consciousness and the human mind. And so I did practice medicine, physical, regular kind of primary care for a little while, but then I pretty quickly started specializing in mental health.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And you said there, this, like, over talking about mental health challenges, I just want to bring something up that came to my mind straight away with an yes and, because I also see a lot of content that gets virality and attention is people also normalizing what is actually not healthy responses. And, like the most basic example could be, oh God, I need a wine at 6 p.m. Like that, ideally, we shouldn't need that.
Right.
But it gets normalized as well. So it's almost like we're normalizing like stuff that's not okay, that's actually really needs to be addressed on a deeper level. But we're also almost like overindulging in everything being wrong with us, which is also needing looking at a deeper level, right?
Absolutely. I mean, I think you're right on, and the reason why we have these extremes is because the generation before us, at least in the American culture, was there's no space for emotion. There's no space for
Oh, it's
feeling. Pull
similar in the
yourself
Australian
right.
culture. It's awful.
Suppress, get to work, pull yourself up by your bootstraps. This is the mentality that was in the previous generation and my generation. And I do think science had a lot to do with this, was saying, wait a minute, emotional health is health, mental health is health, and we need to talk about trauma because this resurgence in not even a resurgence, but for the first time talking about trauma on a national, it being a national conversation. This has never happened before, us actually acknowledging it. So I do think there was a need to acknowledge harm. And at the same time, you're right, we've gotten to a place where if someone disagrees with us, we're now calling that gaslighting, right? Or
Oh, goodness. Yeah,
if
let's not
someone breaks
even
up
get
with us,
started on
right?
disagreement not
If
being allowed now.
if
Yeah,
someone
yeah.
breaks up with us, they were toxic, right? Like we
Mm,
we have these therapy terms now that actually originated in very real issues, actual abuse, and that we're now kind of we've diluted and it's lost its meaning to become everything that happens to us that's uncomfortable is traumatizing. Right. So the pendulum has swung, and I'm hoping that you and I both can be voices to kind of come back to the center and look at what's real, what's true. How do we acknowledge people's experience while not? I think it does more harm to frame some of these conversations as trauma because then people feel like they can't handle. We're getting to a place where people feel like they're not resilient.
mm.
Like I can't handle the normal ups and downs of life.
Yeah.
Right. And anytime I start to feel anxious or sad, I now have a mental health disorder.
Mm-hmm.
Feeling anxious and sad are normal parts of life. That's not a disorder.
Yeah. So, how, as a practitioner, do you dive in with a patient and help navigate what is normal ups and downs of life and then how we respond to those versus there's actually trauma at play here and this is what we need to do with that?
Yeah, that's a great question. Well, you have to listen very
Mm,
attentively to what the person is telling you because this is an area that we don't have a blood test to test for whether or not this person's trauma is legit, right?
hmm.
Like we have to
Yeah.
take their word for that their symptoms, whatever they're experiencing, are impacting their daily function. And so the first criteria, as far as practitioners and professionals will assess for is whether or not the issues that they're having, the symptoms that they're having are impacting their daily life.
Mm,
Is it impacting their work? Is it impacting their relationships? Is it impacting their physical health? And if the answer is yes, then we start thinking in terms of a disorder
mm.
versus the normal ups and downs of life. If someone's having normal ups and downs and they're still able to maintain work, they're able to maintain important relationships to them, then that person can still go to therapy and benefit from
Yeah, I
having
was going to
space
say, because
to
once
be
you've
supported.
defined the difference between is this a resilience issue or a trauma issue, there's a clearer path forward. So, can you sort of give us some insights? Because I'm sure people are thinking about this as soon as we've now defined these as separate scenarios, like, ooh, maybe I don't have trauma. That could be exciting. Like, that could genuinely be exciting because the whole internet's been convinced they have trauma. And so, how do we know we have a resilience issue?
So, again, very good question. We all have trauma.
Mm.
That you don't, I mean, what's that
It's
famous
pretty
saying?
hard to get to.
Like,
Well, I'm
none of us
49
make,
and yeah, no,
right, none of us,
definitely.
there's some famous saying, none of us make it out of here alive. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, we don't make it out without being scathed. Like
Yeah.
there are things that we've all been through. We can all find pain points. We all have those core memories of, a really bad time we were embarrassed in middle school, or a time that we really felt unseen or harmed by our parent. Like we all have
Mm.
that.
Mm-hmm.
And the question of resilience isn't whether or not there's trauma. I assume most people walking in the door, most human beings I meet are going to have some trauma.
Okay.
The resilience piece, it's multifaceted. There's chronic resilience issues, and then there's kind of acute resilience issues. And the
Mm.
acute issues that we're having currently is people are blasting their dopamine with social media every day.
Mm.
And part of that is the content they're receiving, which is you're traumatized, depending on kind of what echo chamber they're in. So they're seeing a lot more therapy speak online,
Mm-hmm.
and that and can do it. And then also having an environment where we're not grounded in natural health principles. So we're not sleeping well, we're on social too much, we are not getting adequate exposure to sunlight, we're not eating healthy diets. All of these things lower our resilience,
Mm.
our physical resilience, which lowers our psychological resilience.
Mm-hmm.
So there's things that we're actively doing that it's impacting our resilience. And then there's the case of people who have chronic trauma, right? Not, in eighth grade, I got embarrassed once. And then there was those couple of times that my parents, who were largely loving and supportive, misattuned with me.
Mm.
I'm talking about people who had chronic abuse, developmental trauma, um, so many different types that chronically over and over and over again, their system was put into fight or flight
Yeah.
or
Well, and now
freeze.
if you think about the evaporation of the middle class happening in a lot of cultures around the world, you then just have life trauma. Like life is so freaking hard to
Yes,
get ahead for people or to even put food on the table. We have 50% of Australian children not eating breakfast. And people are fighting over meat versus beans on the internet. I'm like, dude,
there
if you
are.
really care about health, like we've got some big problems that are
That's
preventing
it. And
people from
they're
being
very,
healthy.
and speaking of harm, like I think part of the even the natural health movement and some things you see about like manifestation online and people kind of the underlying assumption there's like we create our reality, we manifest our reality. And
Mm.
the assumption then is if I'm a single mother of three and can't put food on the table, I'm somehow manifesting this.
Yeah,
Like, no,
exactly.
no.
Mm.
There are real world socioeconomic challenges that are chronic stress. And at the end of
Mm.
the day, depression, a model for depression is chronic stress. That
Yeah.
eventually the system decides that shutting down is actually the wisest thing to do because it can't
Mm.
keep up. And it's chronic overwhelm and chronic stress. And so, yes, we have to look at the biopsychosocial.
Mm.
So there's the biological components, genetics, epigenetics, how you're sleeping, circadian rhythm, food, environmental toxins. There's the social determinants of health, which are your relationships, your social support system. And then, of course, there's psychology, the psycho
Mm.
piece of that, which is what's your personality structure? How was your worldview shaped as a child? How do you see the world? How do you orient to yourself and to others? So all of these, when we're looking at mental health, we can't just pick one to
Yeah.
look at and tell someone, like, for example, like the single mother of three struggling to put food on the table, you just need to change your thoughts and your life will change. No,
No.
no, that just looking at psychology for her is inappropriate. We have to look at
Mm.
the social factors for health.
Mm. Yeah. Well, thank you for broadening that conversation with me because it's just not being had enough. And I think we often see people saying, oh, they're just, violent crime. And like, it's like this whole other thing. I'm like, well, biopsychosocial. Like, how do we get there? We actually have to look after each other, because less stressed out, up against it people equals people actually able to get on in community and do life really well.
Well, that's
And
it.
and then what does that look like in the microcosm of just around you? And that's where it starts.
And I'm sure you've come across this, the research on PTSD shows, not everyone exposed to trauma develops PTSD.
Mm-hmm.
Well, what are the protective factors for the people that are exposed to the same trauma? So they've done this, especially with natural disasters.
Yeah.
You're able to track those pretty well. And the people that something that emerges in over and over again is the people that had social support after the trauma did not develop PTSD. It had
Social support.
social
Wow.
support. It had nothing to do with what they were eating or what their personality was. It had everything to do, and maybe that had a factor going into their social support. But if
Mm.
they felt that they had people around them to support them through what they had been through, whether they talked about it or not, that's another misconception, is that we need to talk about what happened to us. And in a lot of these cases, they weren't necessarily talking about what happened. They were just living life with others and felt supported and held by their community. And those
Mm-hmm.
people were much less likely to develop PTSD.
Wow.
So we are
And
meant to be in community, and that builds resilience more than anything.
100%. And I think we've become quite awkward in our nucleus setups where we're all in these single little buildings. And then a friend has a partner pass away, or he goes through something hectic, and then we don't know what to do. Like, just be there. Literally, just sit with them. Just say,
Yeah.
I don't know what to do, but I'm here.
Yeah. That's it.
Yeah. I think we all need to, like, actually embody community. If we want to see it more, we actually just have to be it more,
Yeah.
even if it feels freaking weird. Like,
Absolutely. And
yeah.
this is the epidemic that we're all seeing. I'm in a group practice with 6 other therapists, and one of the biggest issues is loneliness right
Mm,
now, which is counterintuitive, or it would seem like it was the opposite considering how connected people are on the internet. But of course, we
mm,
know there's actually an inverse relationship there. That the more you're on the internet, the less you actually feel connected.
yeah.
Yeah.
And so, can we unpack that? Because I always find this interesting. Like, if you think about, like, one of the reasons I started Low Tox Life was like 15 years ago. I've got a new baby boy, and I had to quit gluten because there was a relationship between it and strep throat for me. So, bye bye. That was really tough. 20 years ago, let me tell you, that was really tough.
Hmm.
And so, I remember feeling like this problem, like this hassle. Like, every time you went to your friend's house, you were the one that had, like, can you eat rice? Like, just people stressed out about you being different.
Yeah.
It was a really interesting experience, and I managed to shift myself because I'm a really creative person, and probably because I had social support in other ways, growing up, to discovery, not deprivation. Then you start writing recipes, start a blog, people start asking you for the recipes, random strangers on the internet, start a Facebook page. We can then talk about this stuff. So that was my foray into socials. And then, of course, all the little daily products like tooth floss and stuff that I started looking into because I'd had to read food labels like a forensic scientist all of a sudden. I started reading everything. And so the sense of community that people wanted to explore the same things was truly deeply valuable. And I think a lot of people who feel alone, like in their country town, and they've got to stop eating dairy for whatever, and then boom, there's these online communities. So in a sense, they can give you the community you never had. But what we also know with science is that they disconnect us from the tangible community we need, perhaps. Is that kind of
Yes, absolutely.
okay?
I think the reason why it blew up is because of the first thing you were saying. It was like, this
Mm,
is an opportunity. And then the plot got lost for a lot
yeah.
of people. And instead of engaging, there have been studies on this. If you get on social media and post and you are active and you engage, your mental health is not at risk.
Mm-hmm.
If you get on social media and passively consume, those are the folks that tend to have deleterious effects from
Mm-hmm.
being on social. And I think that you're right. I think absolutely it can build community. I think one of the biggest issues, however, is in teenagers who have not yet learned how to go through that awkward social. They've not passed that kind of rite of passage that
Mm.
you have to go through. This is awkward. Am I going to make friends? And social media can be very tempting, I think, for that age group because it's not as risky.
Yeah.
Right? It's a way to kind of engage, but at a distance. It's a way to kind of observe, but you really don't have to risk anything as just a kind of passive observer. And their brains are not fully formed yet to make use of it the way that you're
Mm.
talking about. Like, how are you making use of it? It sounds like you gave a lot of value to the community. You received value and you were able to make use of it in your real life.
Yeah. Yeah.
Social media for a lot of teens is becoming their real life.
Hmm.
There is no real life outside of it.
Such an important distinction.
And that's, I think, the biggest issue. If you're going to have a social media presence, I recommend you do it only if, not a presence, but if you're going to spend a lot of time on it, I only do it if you already have a community outside of that. Would be
Mm-hmm.
for your mental health. There's no like moral judgment here about people being on. I mean, obviously that's where we met.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So
Oh,
I'm
I've
I'm
met
just
some of my best friends on socials.
totally. So have
Yeah.
I. And I've learned so many amazing things and I've made amazing connections and I've received a lot of patience from it.
Mm.
So, but again, we're engaging. We're
Yeah.
not using it as a substitute for relationships. We're
No.
using it as a tool to get more relationships, to get more
Mm-hmm.
connection than we already have.
Yeah. Yeah, it fascinates me as a really social person who does want to engage and connect, how few people engage two ways on socials.
Right.
Or like I'll see people that I've known in the past or been closer friends with at a point in time, and they'll watch every, like, because you can see, they'll just
Yeah.
watch everything I'm doing on socials,
Right.
never interact,
Right.
like nothing. It's like, how it kind of almost makes me feel uncomfortable. I'm like,
It's
ooh, this
safe.
is quite a voyeuristic one way
Right.
vibe we've now got going on. Whereas we used to
And
go
that's
out
become
like,
normal.
yeah.
Become
So it
normal.
is an interesting time. And
Mm.
so, how is this playing out in practice for you? What are you seeing when people walk in the door and you start talking with them?
Regarding social media or
Mm. Just like the change, the shift in dynamics of social connection, community now with the complication of online.
yeah, sometimes I wish I was practicing 40 years ago and to
Mm.
see how things have changed. I mean, human beings have always had psychological issues.
Yeah.
There's always been and always will be challenges. And I think this is just one of the big challenges of our generation currently. I mean, I
Hmm.
think we're seeing it play out politically. We don't need to go there,
Mm.
but the echo chamber, the not being able to tolerate different viewpoints and ideas. I have a lot of younger people in my practice who are cutting off relationships with family members because of political disagreements, and in which case I understand many of them. I understand needing to set boundaries, and at the same time, I this is something that when I talk to my mentors, that was never an issue before.
Mm.
People
And
knew.
which is fascinating, right? Because you guys are learning
Fascinating,
from textbooks that I
right?
imagine 90% of the content were written pre socials
Right,
discussing mental health.
right.
And yet now here you are practicing and supporting people. And what the textbook's saying is like a little bit, but like what I'm
Mhm.
dealing with is a bit different now. So
Yeah, a
that's
lot. I mean,
interesting.
not with all, but with many, a lot of the work I have to do is psychoeducation,
Mm.
educating, because what they're getting from social, like therapy speak, is, a watered down, black and white version of therapy and of trauma and of, like I mentioned before, terms like gaslighting and toxic and narcissism. I mean, these are words now that are in our everyday vocabulary, but people don't really understand what
Such
they
a good
mean.
point. If a healthy home is your priority right now, then Oz Climate, our major podcast partner, without whom we could not put this show on every week, has got you covered with 10% off for Aussies. Code LowToxLife. Dehumidifying is a particular passion of mine because it helps us prevent moisture, excess humidity, and of course, therefore, mold in our indoor environments. Of course, if you ever have a leak or a flood, contact a mold technician or a building biologist. But for everyday living, you would be surprised the impact that good dehumidification can make in your indoor environment. I've done a ton of reels on this to help you know how long, what size of unit, how many units, different floor plans. Everything's there on my Instagram at LowToxLife, and you'll see all the white background tiles are part of a humidity literacy series. I hope it helps you. Head to ozclimate.com.au. They have heating and cooling solutions, amazing dehumidifiers, and their Winix air purifier range. Okay, I have an example that's not about mental health that'll really help bring this to life. I work with a trainer once a week, and my son's turning 16 in a couple of weeks' time, and he wanted a gym membership. So I said, yes, but you'll work with my trainer for a few weeks until your birthday. I'm not just letting you loose in a gym having absolutely no idea what you're doing. Anyway, because it's the same trainer, like Mark then talks to me about like the session with Seb, and he's like, oh my gosh, I can just, from whatever he says, I can tell exactly the accounts he's following in exercise and you know, men's health on the internet. And I was like, oh wow. So it's like because of what you're saying. So things become the vernacular.
Yes.
And the zeitgeist and what everybody's talking about. And yet the depth of understanding isn't there.
Right.
You know, so Seb said, oh, you know, those creatine capsules you got me, Mum, like, supposed to be 3 to 5 grams. I'm like, you're 15. Don't talk to me about creatine. Talk to your trainer and your pediatrician, and then we'll reassess. Thanks.
And do you think, I mean, not to throw your son here.
No, it's okay. I like using personal examples all the time because I think real life, like people doing life, is always a great way to
and it resonates, right?
Explore things. Yeah,
people can understand that. Do you think it's educating him? Is it leading to some anxiety for him? Like there seems to be a not for him.
No. So what I'm really careful to do is to say ideas from the internet, great. Then let's research them together. I'm going to teach you how to form a thought based on multiple perspectives. Yeah. You do not get to arrive, you get to explore. And so let's learn how to do that. And so I'm very, very much holding his hand through this. And we have a laugh. And then, you know, it just when things are like, oh, yeah, that makes sense. Fair enough. Now that I know this as well, you know, I think it's so important.
And I think training them, like you and I had a discussion or we went back and forth a little bit on Instagram, I believe, about, you know, being really good at just noticing good marketing and good communication. And people like need to understand, even these doctors that have accounts are sensationalizing studies. I just saw one, and I actually worked with this doctor in LA, and he's like, breaking news, you know, and the headline, and it's like, it was a study from 2021. Yeah. And it's like, but they use this because the name of the game is your attention. And if they can get your attention, they hold it and you engage with their account and they say something inflammatory to get you to respond and comment on their post, they've won. You know, not that it's a battle, but people don't, my daughter's only 4, but when she comes of age, I'm going to train her. Who knows what it'll be like in 10 years from now or 15 when she gets the phone at 20, because I won't allow her to social media. But to train her to, this is good marketing. I know and I get taken. I'm a naturopathic doctor and I have ads that show up for creatine or for this new supplement. And I start to find myself going, oh, do I need that?
We
Do
all
I?
do it. I think anyone would be lying
Course, we're
if they
all
said, "Yeah, no, I'm
people.
completely
But
unaffected
this
by
is,
what I see."
imagine me,
Mm,
I have 3 degrees in holistic medicine. I'm an
mm,
acupuncturist, I'm a therapist, and I'm a naturopathic doctor. And I still go down the do I need this thing?
mm.
And if I'm doing that
Yeah.
with the training I have, I can imagine that people are overrun and overwhelmed with
Mm,
the amount of stuff they feel like they should be doing. So a lot of my work on day one is to scale back for people to slow down and to say what's really happening. Like when you come in and say you're anxious, what's actually happening? Because that
yeah.
actually, you being saying you're anxious, quote unquote, doesn't tell me anything.
Yeah. Okay.
What are the stories you're telling yourself? I shouldn't be anxious. I shouldn't be depressed. One of my mentors used to say, if you're not a little depressed, you're not paying attention.
Mm,
Because things are kind of depressing right now,
yeah.
and there is that resilience there. But like if you're feeling something is good.
Mm,
And maybe we can explore what that is, or maybe we can help you with the intensity of it so that you can continue working and continue being present in your relationships. But in general, this kind of idea that people come in with an assumption that I shouldn't ever feel anxious,
mm.
which is crazy,
So crazy.
right?
How did we get there?
I
Wow.
don't know. It's
And
yeah.
so obviously you felt like, you just mentioned acupuncture, psychotherapy as well. I think you've added that to your bow.
Yep,
And
that's what I do primarily now.
yeah, and talk to me about where bringing, you've had some fantastic posts lately on psychedelics, and I know that you perform ketamine-assisted therapy.
Yes. Mhm.
Something I absolutely love that you said recently was around shamanism and like, please be aware that like it is a huge body of work to actually become a shaman, to be able to use that word. Um, and like, I think there's just so many red flags, right? The buff white linen shirt,
Yeah.
who's a spiritual teacher, big red flag, because often it's people who are traumatized, who've figured a few things out for themselves, who then feel ready to figure it out for everyone else. Talk to us about, without disparaging, because like a come to Jesus moment for someone is like a big moment. Not
Mhm.
even implying that that is a Christian thing. I'm just using
Mhm.
it as a
Mhm.
phrase. But like you feel so strongly that you figured this thing out, and then you have social media, so you could start this community. And like there is a danger in that when we're talking about mental health, resilience, trauma. Talk us through your thoughts on that.
Yeah, I have many. So I think it'd be helpful to know a little bit about my experience and where I come from with
Yeah.
this to hear what I have to say on it. Because I think um, by all accounts, I would be among one of these people. So
Mm.
my first psilocybin experience was at 15 years old.
Oh,
I,
wow.
I was treating my own depression, didn't know I was. Long story short, I was self-medicating with
Hmm.
pretty much anything I could get my hands on. And one day that happened to be mushrooms. And my depression completely went away. It was a
Wow.
6-hour trip.
So, how does
And
a 15-year-old find mushrooms?
oh, I found lots of
You
things.
had your ways.
Um, I had my ways. I was at a house I was at a house I had no business being at, and
Hmm.
with a friend who knew someone in college. There was a local college here. I grew up in Nashville, and there are several colleges here. And it was at some college frat party house, and we were offered it. And at that point, again, I didn't know any better than to self-medicate. I was self-medicating at the time with marijuana and with pills and with anything really that I could get my
Oh,
hands on.
Caitlin,
And
can
yeah,
I?
it was,
I
yeah.
don't know if you feel comfortable sharing. Great. If not, I completely understand. But at 15, why? What was needing so
I had
much?
my family life was not great. I
Mm,
had a very difficult relationship with my mother. who I have a great relationship with now,
Oh,
but
wow.
very, very difficult relationship with her. I had a very difficult relationship with my stepdad. My father, who I adored, was absent.
Ugh.
I was an only child, and then my mom had a child when I was 10, and my father had two children that same one child, another child that year, and then another child. So I was a single child for 10 years, and then all of a sudden, my mom and dad both have these other families. And that triggered what I think, this is me looking back. At the time, I had zero language for this,
Yeah.
but that triggered a lot of developmental trauma wounds I had. There was a lot of trauma in my first and second and third year of life. My parents split during my first year. It was very dramatic and traumatic for
Mm.
me. And I had a sudden split from my father. And then my stepfather was challenging.
Mm.
So, all these people are still alive. So I am careful the language
Of
that I use.
course.
And I
Yeah.
currently don't blame anyone for anything, but it was rough for me.
Mm.
So I was dealing with a lot of developmental stuff, feeling unwanted, feeling unloved, feeling unseen, feeling unworthy, all of the things. And I think marijuana made me feel better. I think like alcohol made me feel better. And then, yeah, I found mushrooms and I accidentally tripped and had an amazing experience where for the first time in my life, I felt like I belonged somewhere. I
Wow.
knew that I belonged to the earth. I remember looking at the moon out of the back of the Jeep I was riding in and thinking like I am made of the same substance as that is. And that was incredibly comforting to me. And after that, my depression was gone for maybe 5 years until went,
Wow.
yeah, I went to college and had a bad breakup and kind of, talking about
That'll do it.
that'll do it. The underlying stuff,
Yeah.
my personality is more depressive. So we talk a lot about moods in psychology, but we don't talk a lot about personalities these days. But we all have an underlying personality structure, and mine just happens to be depressive. I've embraced that. I think that that makes me a deep thinker, and it makes me creative, and it makes me look at the deep meaning in everything. And I'm a very
Mm.
existential person, and I love that about myself now.
Mm,
Um,
that's why we get along on the
yeah.
internet. My favorite subject at university was existentialism, actually.
Yeah.
Yeah. Mm.
So I know I'm being long-winded here, but that was my
No,
first
it's important. The
experience.
context is
Yeah.
everything.
So that was my first experience with mushrooms. And then when I went to college, I ended up dating a guy who was selling mushrooms. And so I was able to experience them again in college. And then I moved to India, my year after I graduated from college.
A
Again,
natural
really,
progression.
really
Yeah.
long story, but I was pre-med, decided against going to medical school that year, thought I was just going to take a gap year, ended up in India, was already into yoga and meditation. When I was in India, I met a spiritual teacher who became my guru for 10 years, and he happened to be a Brazilian shaman.
Aha.
So he was a shaman before he went to India, found his guru, and became enlightened. So we would work with ayahuasca as a sacrament in the group together.
Mm.
So, over a period of 15, 20 years, I did most psychedelics. That the only one I've not done currently is ibogaine, which is
Hmm.
iboga, which has just been approved for research in Texas for PTSD.
Hmm.
So I've done ayahuasca maybe 30 times. A lot of psilocybin, DMT combo, LSD. So I have a leg to stand on here
Yeah, yeah.
in saying what I'm saying, and I have a year-long certificate in psychedelic therapy and research. So
Which you also say isn't even enough
isn't
in
even
your
enough.
mind.
Doesn't
Yeah.
touch the surface.
Mm.
So I think when you first start, if someone had caught me at 15 after my first session, my first psilocybin experience, I would have said, everyone on planet Earth should do this.
Mm.
And I will be the one to help them get it. I mean,
Yeah.
I would have
Because
been
you
all
had that
in.
moment, you had that,
Had.
oh my gosh, everyone needs to know about this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it only was at year like 10 that I was like, wait a minute, there is more to this than anyone knows. It took me that long to realize some of the harm that had been done in my earlier psychedelic experiences. I got very lucky with my first psilocybin experience,
Mm.
but there were a couple of other ones in college that could have gone sideways quickly.
And what does
You
that
are
mean? What does that look
you
like?
you are very vulnerable and in a very open state when you're on psychedelic medicine.
Hmm.
You trust issues come up, boundary issues come up. People are heightened, their suggestibility is heightened. Um, their boundaries are not intact. So
Mm.
my normal ability to say no or to say yes is fluid on
Mm.
psychedelics. You cannot consent when you're
Yeah,
on
that's huge.
one of these
Yeah.
medications. And so the vulnerability can be obviously very transformative, but it can also be harmful if you're in a space with people who have not done their own work or not trained to hold space for someone going through maybe a regression or a traumatic experience that they're reliving while they're on the psychedelic. And if the person is not trained to hold that, they're going to put a lot of their own desires and wishes for you onto you.
Hmm.
So the work of shamanism, it's a lot of ego work on the self so that you make sure that you've removed enough of yourself as possible so that you can actually be a channel and an usher and a guide for the people who are experiencing it.
Hmm.
So it's very easy in the beginning to have what we call a spiritual ego take over, where
Yes.
you begin to feel like a god complex, right? Like I am the shaman, I am the person who's doing this work. It is me.
Hmm.
And you have to do a tremendous amount of work to really know and embody it is not you doing this work, it is the medicine.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. And this, so can we just get a few little red flag pieces of advice for people who maybe at a moment in their life where they're considering going down this path, maybe they're following someone who takes people on group trips to the jungle. Like you see a lot on the internet, and I want people to
Yeah.
be safe in their exploration, like safe and free at the same time. Like I'm sure it's possible, but what does that look like?
Yeah, I am careful to not tell people usually directly you should or shouldn't do this.
Mm.
So just to frame this next part of the conversation, none of these are legal currently
Mm.
except for ketamine, right?
Yeah.
Psilocybin, ibogaine, MDMA, LSD, these are all still categorized as Schedule 1 medications in the United States, which means they are not even available with a prescription.
Mm.
They're
We
only,
have assisted therapies with a couple of those now that are legal, but you do
that's
have to work
amazing.
with a psychiatrist. Yeah.
Yeah, that's where we're hoping to get, but we're not
Yeah,
there yet.
Australia's pioneering. It's actually quite
Yeah,
amazing.
yeah. So it is the wild, wild west here as far as so people anyone can kind of do this underground.
Mm.
Some clinical folks do this underground, some doctors, some therapists, some psychologists have decided that it is worth the risk. And they have a big risk because they could lose their license,
Yeah.
right? If they do this, but some have decided it's worth the risk to be able to facilitate this work. That's their choice. I've chosen to not do that and to not go
Hmm.
underground and to wait for licensure. So one of the criteria would be, are they a clinician? Are they medically trained? Do they have credentials in psychedelic therapy?
Mm.
Most of them are not going to have that because, again, a lot of people with a license aren't willing to risk that. Another thing would be when you have a conversation with them, does it feel like they are selling you, or does it feel like they're really interested to know why you're interested in doing this medicine? They're able to offer you their philosophy on it, how long they've been doing it, what their personal experience is with it, their safety protocols. These are all questions that I would be asking a facilitator.
Mm.
What do you do if someone needs to go to the hospital? Because they are scared. A lot of people will not call EMS because they don't want to be found out because what they're doing is illegal.
Mm.
So What do you do if someone needs to go to the hospital? What do you do if someone's having a acute traumatic stress response? Is there someone there to hold space for that? How do you help us prepare and integrate afterwards? Is it I come see you, we do the medicine, and then I never talk to you again?
Mm.
And who are
Or
they
here's my
accountable?
like 3 session pack and then you're done
Right.
kind of thing.
And then you're
Yeah.
done.
Mm.
And what's my accessibility to you? You know, that's one, like, can I call you the next day if I'm struggling? Like, are you accessible? And then what's their accountability? Who are they accountable to? If
Mm.
someone's not accountable to anyone, and that could be their mentor, who's your mentor? Who's your supervisor? Right? Like,
Yeah.
do you have who have you trained with? And are you currently in touch with them and talk to them about issues as they've come up?
That's a good one.
And that's one that people don't usually think to ask, but some kind of having a professional, like Santo Daime, for example, it's the group that I've sat with the most with ayahuasca. They have standards within their community. And
Mm.
if any leader of a work, the community knows when they do a work under the name of Santo Daime. And if anything happens in that work that is outside the guidelines of their church, there are elders that you can go to talk about what happened,
Mm-hmm.
right? So there's some standard in place. There's some safety net in place that you know that those people are going to be accountable to someone. The people that are just out here dosing people in the forest and aren't accountable to anyone, that to me is a big red flag.
Yeah.
They
Okay.
also don't have anyone checking their own ego or checking their work.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Who are your critics, your
Right.
people that keep you in check? Yeah. We all need those. The internet's made us kind of feel like we don't. That's the problem.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Okay. And so you mentioned ketamine and that you have chosen to go down that path to bring that element into your practice. How do you decide, because we'll see online, here are the natural ways to support depression and let's get some vitamin D, let's get some nature, let's make sure we've got healthy friendships. Like, how do we go from that's going to be good for you if you stick to it, commit, and show up and put in practice those lifestyle factors that can bolster someone in depression, in a depressive state, to let's try ketamine assisted therapy? Like, what do we try lots of things before we get to that? I founded Low Tox Life in 2009, and as the community grew, I started to identify areas that people needed structured learning. And that is when the first e-course, Go Low Tox, was born in 2014. Since then, I've worked with scientists and health professionals to bring you low-cost courses to help you shortcut your goals with whatever you're challenged by right now. So whether you're new to going low tox and you'd love a framework and some really helpful suggestions across 22 different topics covering everyday life, or maybe you're working on an inflammation picture and you just want some help to calm the farm, whether you're on a fertility journey, either having trouble or wanting to optimize, we literally have courses for these and more. Head to lowtoxlife.com, hit the course tab, and enjoy.
Usually if someone's coming to me and they don't already have in their mind they want to do ketamine, I always recommend starting with something else.
Mm,
Unless it is a very severe case of treatment resistant depression
yeah.
or major depression with suicidal ideation.
Okay.
Those are the two, or if I can't get them to commit to coming to see me every week, right?
Yeah.
If they're like, I can't, I have 6 weeks. I mean, that doesn't really happen, but if that were the case, then I would say, okay, we just need to get going here.
Mm,
I've found that ketamine is most effective and lasts the longest. The effects last longer, with adequate preparation and therapy beforehand and a lot of supportive measures around it. So kind of just like with all the stuff we're talking about, that there's been a lot of sensationalization, I guess,
yeah.
around ketamine, and it's this amazing treatment, and it is. And what people don't talk about is that people tend to relapse at very high rates with
Hmm.
ketamine. So ketamine is
Relapse
very,
into depression.
yes.
Hmm.
So ketamine is one of the reasons why it's so amazing is because it's so rapid in its effect. So
Mm.
most of the antidepressants that we have take about 6 weeks to work, 4 to 6 weeks to start
Wow.
having an
It's a
effect.
slow
Ketamine,
build.
it's a slow build. And ketamine is, of course, a pharmaceutical medication, but it works within 24 or 48 hours
Is this
usually.
how people get addicted to it?
I think some people for sure self-medicating with it,
Mm.
their own depression. That could be a big piece of it.
Yeah.
But it can be addictive. Yeah.
Mm.
And it's becoming more popular in the US as a drug of abuse than it
Yeah.
used to be, unfortunately. But it is a very reliable and powerful antidepressant. But after that 1 to 2 day mark, without other supportive measures in place, the majority of people will relapse.
Hmm.
Sometimes they don't relapse to as bad as they were before they started ketamine, but there is a downslide
Yeah.
typically. And this is something that, proponents of ketamine don't talk a lot about, but I think we should be talking more about. And I think they don't talk about it because they don't want people to be deterred, because for treatment resistant depression, which is a very hard to treat form of depression, ketamine has absolutely saved people's lives.
Yeah.
So it is definitely worth a try. It's safe. It's for the most part cheap. The medication is cheap. Um, Johnson and Johnson made Spravato, which is
Yes. I heard
yeah,
about that.
another
It's even
form of,
more effective. Yeah.
it's not,
Mm.
unfortunately, but it is covered by insurance. So repeated dosing helps with ketamine. But to answer your question, I would usually start with more sustainable interventions, like
Mm.
how's the person sleeping, how are they eating, how are uh, what's happening for them cognitively, psychologically speaking. Um, do we need to improve their light environment, their circadian rhythm? Do they have a toxic mold exposure that's creating neuroinflammation that's manifesting as depression?
Thank you
So,
for asking that question as someone
yeah,
affected by that. It's just, you know, so many people like, oh, but you just need to do this protocol and I just need a healthy home, actually. I know
yeah,
that about myself. If I'm in
exactly.
a healthy home, everything just lines up.
And
Mm.
this is, we've we've just gotten so, because of the insurance, I don't blame physicians, but we've gotten into this system where we have 7 minutes with the patient. And to
Mm.
diagnose major depressive disorder, you are supposed to rule out any other organic cause. It
Yeah.
says as part of the criteria that it can only be diagnosed if this condition is not attributable to something else.
Hmm.
But in 7 minutes, you don't have time to go through all of the things that could cause depression.
Mm.
So we're just diagnosing it, labeling it, giving them an antidepressant without ever actually finding what the cause of their depression was.
Yeah. And in that system, then again, you can't blame the safest, easiest, fastest, cheapest way to support someone is through that
Right.
medication SSRI pathway.
Right. But the thing is that, the STAR-D trial, which was a $35 million trial,
Mm.
showed that SSRIs are barely more effective than placebo.
Yeah.
So that's why ketamine has been such a revolution in mental health, is because it's got a 70% success rate. But the fine print on that is you got to keep doing it
Mm.
to maintain that level if you're not doing other things at the same time. So sometimes I will use ketamine to get someone over a hump while we're working on all the other stuff, because, exercise, the most effective thing for depression that we have.
Yeah.
Period. It, secondary to assuming we've already taken out whatever the cause is, assuming we've removed them from the moldy house,
Mm.
exercise is the most effective thing for depression. Have you ever tried to get a depressive person to exercise? It's very difficult.
It is. Yeah.
So sometimes I'll use ketamine in the beginning just to get them enough energy, enough hope, enough, oh yeah, I could feel like this again. Like, oh yeah, I remember what it feels like to have some energy, to get them exercising, and then we've got the ball rolling.
Yeah,
Yeah,
so powerful. And so, yeah, so from what I'm hearing, it's an amazing SOS, but the scaffolding is what actually makes it a
that
part
is,
of the success picture.
I'm stealing that. That is such a good way to describe it.
Okay.
Yes.
Mm,
And it worked, ketamine works on a different neurotransmitter system. There's still so much we don't know about depression. There could be people with genetic mutations in their glutamate system that
mm,
need some help, and ketamine is a glutamate agonist. So there's so much we don't understand about the causes of depression for some people. Like nothing seems to help. So there may be a world where a ketamine analog that's not as addictive may have to be kind of a daily pill for some people.
yeah. And can you share a story where like you cannot believe the turnaround? How amazing that whole experience was for that patient?
Yeah, there have been many.
Mm,
The one that always comes up for me was one of my first. This was in I think 2018, in January of 2018, and it was I'll try to maintain her, shield her identity, but she was very depressed. This was in California. She came in with her partner, and I don't think at that point in my career I had sat with someone this depressed. She couldn't look at me in the eye. Her partner largely spoke for her. The feeling of being in the room with her was like being with someone who was dying. Like the energy was
and how old was she?
that low. She was in her mid 30s,
Okay.
maybe mid to late 30s. And I kind of got the story, and they were coming to me as a naturopathic doctor, and in California, I can prescribe ketamine. And I had just gotten out of my training, my ketamine training weekend, and I thought, they came to me to do like a naturopathic assessment, and I thought this person is exactly just walked into my office. This is exactly the person that ketamine could help.
Mm,
So I did one session with her, and the session was largely unremarkable. She laid there, she listened to the music. She was mainly having an internal experience. She was quiet. I was really unsure what was going on, and this was in early days for me. So I was like, man, I hope she's having a good time. Like, I don't know
mm.
what's happening. I did an integration with her the next day, and then I didn't see her for 4 weeks. And I thought about her every day. Like, is she worse? Is she still around? I was I didn't hear from her, and I was very concerned. And then all of a sudden, 4 weeks later, she shows up to my office for a follow-up appointment, and she's looking me in the eye. She walks right into my room, sits down, and tells me that her entire life looks different. Like her whole
Wow.
She started volunteering at her children's school. She decided to go back to work. She was cooking again. She was engaging with her partner. Like she is in tears telling me that she feels alive. And I
Mm,
said, "Well, what happened? Like what happened during the ketamine experience?"
mm,
And she said that she went back and relived a moment in her childhood that she felt energetically was being activated in her current life. And it was this long, beautiful reconciliation story
how
that she had
nice.
with herself. And
Yeah.
that was it.
Wow, that
And
was it. And
that was
so
it.
I can imagine, though, then the danger is that you, as a practitioner, have this born again moment around ketamine. I've got to give everybody this. This is going to be amazing. And then you're like, oh
Very hard
shit,
not to
it
believe
didn't do
that.
it the same way for
Yeah, but
you.
you
Yeah.
have to live that
Mm,
out, right? And you have enough
mm,
humility and enough training
yeah.
enough
That's,
to
yeah.
say, okay, it might not happen again, but it might. And who am I to be able to say whether, and I have a spidey sense now, I have an intuition, but I don't know if it's
Mm,
gonna be life changing for someone or not. I don't know that. And the thing that turns me off the most is when I hear people say they know. Like I
mm.
know oh my gosh,
And
one
that's the difference between the marketing and the
right.
curiosity for the patient.
There's a and oh, I wish I could remember their name, and I would not mind calling them out because it was public. I mean, it was on their website. It's this place. Oh, it's Ceremonia in
Hmm.
Colorado. And in Colorado, I don't know that it's legal or if it's just not criminalized to do psilocybin, but they have a psilocybin group that they do. And I heard this guy on a podcast, and he sounded grounded, and he's not a clinician, but he sounded humble about the work that he did. And I went on their website, and the front page said transformation guaranteed.
Red
And I thought
flag.
to
We now
myself,
know this is a red flag. Oh my goodness. Okay.
transformation guaranteed.
And be the vulnerable person with the mental health issue the day you see that front page of that website. Like, hello, that's awful.
And I get, on some level, I guess I get they're trying to tap into the placebo effect or something, but the gall, to say that I guarantee you are going to have a transformation. So I'm really careful about expectations when I tell people, look, you're probably going to feel great for a day or two, but if we don't do this deeper work, I don't think it's going to last. That's just been my experience. And then I tell them about this woman that did one ketamine session and her life changed. And that's possible too. So if people come to me and say, I feel very strongly that I need to do ketamine with you, I tend to listen to that.
Yeah.
They know themselves better than me. I still do my assessment. I still ask them to give me a couple of sessions before we do ketamine because that I feel more comfortable that way. But I tend to listen to them if they feel like, look, I think this is what's going to help me.
Mm. And so you mentioned placebo, so let's go there if we have time. Do we have time?
Sure.
Yeah. So with placebo then, in that example you just gave, it sounds like you could actually honor that is therefore going to be a factor for increased success in a case like that.
Totally.
Mm.
If they believe it's going to work, it's more likely to work.
Yeah.
No doubt. No doubt about it. But I always go back to, and I think you'll appreciate this, like, what does work mean?
Mm.
Like when they say, I want to be better, like I really have to get clear with people before we start, no matter who they are, of what that means to them.
Yeah.
And what they're looking for.
Mm. I remember interviewing Dr. Terry Walls a few years ago, and she, those lines that just pierce through the screen and out to the internet. And she said, you have to know what you want your health for very specifically. And that's just gold, because I just want to be better. Like, what? What does that even mean? You have to be specific. You have to know what better is going to look like, and then better for you, as you said. It's not the same as like better because that person on the internet tells me that's what a great healthy life looks like.
Right. And there are people that can be in the natural health world, I see it all the time, people who are obsessed with optimizing every part of their life.
Mm.
And it's the same thing of like, for what?
Mm.
Right. So, and I've had people that have stellar labs. They look physically amazing, and they have no great relationships in their life. They have no meaning or purpose. And so that's when I really started to see that in the naturopathic world, was when I was like, you know what? The hardest thing about this is the mind. And that's what I want to treat, because it's to some degree, it's kind of easy to get their thyroid up, or it's, to get them sleeping. I mean, can be really tricky.
Don't tell me that as a 49-year-old woman, Katelyn.
Sleep can be tricky, but I think sleep is mostly tricky because, well, one, we're out of alignment with the sun, but also because of the mind.
Yeah.
Because what most people say is, I lay down at night and I can't turn my mind off.
Mm-hmm.
And that the existential questions of why are you here? What does it mean to you to be alive? What is your purpose on earth? Those are the things that at the end of the day, even if you don't have your health, if you have those, you're okay.
Then you remember what you're working on with your health as well.
Right. And you have motivation for doing so.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. What a great conversation. Thank you so much for sharing.
Yeah.
I feel like I could have gone another hour. Where can we find you?
Well, I'm in Nashville. I have a practice here. I see people in person at Simply Being Therapy, and that's mainly where I'm at these days. And online, I'm at Dr. Kalstein on Instagram, and I don't have TikTok or Threads or
Oh, God, neither. Who's got the time?
X or or whatever all the other stuff is. But
Yeah, old
and then
school.
I'm very easy to find because I think my name is quite unique. I don't know any other Dr. Kalsteins, but my website's also just drkalstein.com.
Well, thank you for showing up the way you do, and it's been a joy to speak with you today.
Yeah, thank you so much. My pleasure.
Thank you for joining us in listening to this week's show. If you're not already subscribed or following the show on whatever platform you listened, please do that now. It helps enormously in terms of getting this show out to more people. Another way you can connect and support the work we do so that we can support you in your low tox life is join us in the Low Tox Club. You'll get access to amazing member masterclasses where we invite some of our best show guests for a live Q&A with members. You also have great shopping discounts from low tox businesses and honestly, the nicest low tox community Facebook group that exists on the internet. I do hope you join us there. It costs just the price of a coffee a month on average. Head to lowtoxlife.com, hit the Explore tab, and Low Tox Club is the first option there. Thank you so much for listening, and we'll see you next week.